Namaste. My name is Amok, and welcome to the Amok Astra podcast. So, today I have with me a very special guest, the host of the Charvak podcast, Kushal Mehra. Hi, Kushal. It's great to have you.
No, Samo, good to have a chat with you. Excited that you've also started a podcast.
Yeah, thanks. I've been actually following your podcast content for quite some time now, and your content is certainly very interesting. So, you cover a lot of social issues, you cover legal issues, you cover economics, and you cover science. But uh, one of your favorite areas of working is philosophy. And I think you just finished your MPhil degree as well, right?
Yeah, it's in IGNU. It's called Masters of Arts in Philosophy. So technically MPhil नहीं है, तो अभी भी चालू है.
Acha, 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 yeah. So what I wanted to ask you about that was what attracted you to philosophy in the first place? Because I think it influences a lot of your content. So I wanted to know why you were attracted to philosophy in the first place.
I don't know. I just have too many questions, and if anybody who has too many questions will naturally get attracted to philosophy, because the core essence of philosophy is to understand things, and philosophy is based on the fundamental premise that things need to be, unpacked. And nowadays, obviously, philosophy is kind of outdated, and science is the only tool that has been used. But I still feel there are a lot of issues. Even today, that philosophy can help us in. And for me, I was very naturally inquisitive, so I just got attracted to philosophy, primarily because I wanted to know how ancient people thought, because I'm very interested in how humans have evolved at a species level. So I would love to understand, whether it doesn't matter if they're Chinese, American, or Indian. I just find it very interesting how people think.
Yeah.
And philosophy basically tells you how people think and how their thought and their ideas develop. So that was, I think, the primary reason that I got attracted. Also, I think if somebody reads science, it's very important to read philosophy too. I
Okay.
think philosophy can play a very good role in complementing somebody who is interested in science, because when it comes to ethics and morals, I think these are philosophical issues. People don't realize that how much of our life is governed by ethics and morals. If people don't realize simply that your whole life is governed by rules, where
Yeah.
do those rules come from? Rules
Exactly.
come
Yeah.
from philosophy. And
Yes.
these kinds of debates that happen in philosophy, we have taken it for granted, till the extent that we don't even know where it comes from. That's how, I mean, when people built the constitutional system, or when people had those debates,
Hmm.
they were having philosophical debates as to why is the harm principle valid.
Yeah.
Like, people don't realize that the harm principle is a philosophical concept,
Yeah.
and that philosophical concept that eventually goes into jurisprudence and
Hmm.
then becomes a legal principle.
Yeah.
So philosophy is actually an essence of many things. So anybody who wants to know why things are the way they are pretty much has to do philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, science actually, you could say that science came from philosophy. So it actually has a common origin point. So I could see why you said that everyone who studies science has to have like a philosophical background, because there's an entire philosophy of science itself. There's an epistemology of science as well. What I also gathered from what you said right now is that philosophy basically gives you principles. You quoted one. You quoted harm principle. So, but my question would be, what are some non-negotiable principles that you would say that philosophy has given us, which govern our day-to-day life? One example that you've clearly given right now is of harm principle, so which basically decides the jurisprudence of, say, any country, that you are not to harm others. Your freedom ends. Your right to wave your fist ends where my face begins. This is basically the harm principle. So, what would you say are some similar first principles that you always keep talking about? They obviously come from philosophy, right? So,
I think Hindu philosophy talks about the principle of mutual respect and reciprocity. I think
yeah.
that to me is a non-negotiable if I want to have a discussion. I mean, my biggest problem with Abrahamic mindsets has always been that they say we will give you tolerance, and
Hmm.
I always use the example. Rajiv Malhotra says that, you are having dinner with someone. Why are you going to tell your wife I'm tolerating you on the dinner table? What kind of a condescending way is this to have a conversation? There
Yeah.
has to be mutual respect. There has to be reciprocity. So that is something that directly comes from Indian philosophy. If you don't want to use Hindu philosophy, dharmic philosophy, that is a principle I think is a non-negotiable. then I think something that I have received from Indian philosophy, which I always say the no first strike ahimsa version,
Yeah.
which obviously has a caveat where sometimes you have to strike people. But the point is 99.99% of the times you should follow the no first strike policy.
Yeah.
I am not a pacifist, but that is something I believe should be a non-negotiable when it comes to discussion.
Yeah.
And again, non-violence as a principle comes from philosophy, is part of your law.
Yeah.
The government is clear that you as an average citizen can't go around punching people. So there's your direct principle which comes from philosophy. Now people might say it comes from religion. Well, it is coming from the philosophy inside religion. Even religion has philosophy, right? People
True.
don't get it that the religion has different aspects. And there are some aspects that are deep philosophical aspects, and the philosophy is all around us. I mean, even with your first principles, whether it's the Nyaya syllogism or whether it's Aristotle's logic, those are all philosophical. These people built it from a philosophical. I mean, inside philosophy, logic is a proper field, right? So how do you build an argument? So there are 3 steps in it, or according to the Nyayikas, there were 6 steps in it.
Okay.
So there are different schools that are different things. So anybody who reads philosophy actually automatically starts building first principles, because dialectic is one of the most important aspects of philosophy. How to have a conversation, like one of the most famous methods in Western philosophy is the Socratic method.
Yes.
So how would Socrates go down and keep on asking you questions till you get to the essence of it?
Yeah.
Now, or let's say when you want to have an argument with someone, they have, in English it is called steel manning, and in Hindi or in Sanskrit it is called purva paksha.
Yeah.
These are all concepts that are right out of philosophy, which should be an everyday tool in your life. I mean, I don't see, this is why I don't talk to people on Twitter, because they don't do a purva paksha of my argument. If you're going to have a conversation with me on any platform, your first job has to be to go and look at my body of work or my body of opinions. If you have not done that, then you're wasting your time. I mean, you want to abuse me, please be my guest. I am more than happy abused with all the abuses. It just makes me laugh at times. But the point is that if you want to really have a discourse, and if you really had some grounding in philosophy, you would actually go and make the effort of learning the other side's argument. Otherwise, you can't build societies.
Yeah, I mean, I get a feeling that people kind of live in some echo chambers where they don't even want to listen to what the other person has to say. And I really think that it stems out of a fear that what if I'm wrong? Have you observed that among people? That, I mean, people are just they resist exposing themselves to new ideas, and that's why they come up with all sorts of weird defense mechanisms that they don't want to know the other because they are convinced that the other person
applies
is
to
wrong.
all sides. That applies. In fact, I have seen this fear of what if I'm wrong in both equally. When it comes to the field of religion, I've seen it with religious people and new atheists too. I mean, new atheists are also equally scared sometimes of their cherished beliefs, and it's just because the one thing, I will repeat this again, the one principle that has to be embedded in everybody is epistemic humility, the humility right here in your head, that I don't know. Unfortunately, human beings can't function with I don't know. Human beings crave certainty. Human beings need to know that if I go on a terrace and step down, I'm going to fall, gravity is going to do its work and I'm going to die. I need to be certain about that. So beyond a point, human beings crave certainty, and our evolution is as such that we want to be certain of the things around us, because most of our reactions are just motor functions, right? We just react instantly to things. And in that, if you add the virus of uncertainty that a lot of people like me do, most people can't handle it. And I kind of understand. So I will not dismiss the fear of what if I'm wrong completely. I think it's somewhere deep rooted in us. It's hardwired in us, and it is there to protect us in a very weird way. What we need to realize is that there is a limit to everything. And when people first of all, people have completely misunderstood social media. I think social media was not meant for discourses. It was meant for pronouncements. So we should never take social media echo chambers as a reality. I have had zero fruitful conversations on social media with anyone since I have existed on those platforms from 2010. I have had so many fruitful conversations just over a coffee shop or a dinner table, or a restaurant or just a get together with a bunch of friends where we exchange ideas.
Yeah.
Social media, there is no exchange of ideas. There is one-upmanship where you want to have the last word. So I don't think so. Social media is the platform. What
Hmm.
has happened is everybody wants to make that platform
Hmm.
into something that it can't be. If
Okay.
you want to have an
Mhm.
exchange, you have to get rid of, not get rid of is that is shut it. No, no, no.
Mhm.
It has its place where
Yeah.
you make announcements. It's like a town hall
Hmm.
where, old school में वो नगाड़ा लेके बजाते थे, सुनो
हाँ
सुनो
हाँ
सुनो राजा
हाँ.
महाराजा ने ये बोला. So you should do your suno 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 over there, and then you come to either platforms like podcasts, or you just have your daily conversations, and
Yeah.
that's where you have these things, and these are habits.
Okay.
Social media के पहले भी people were living in echo chambers, if you ask me. Social media has just put a stamp of approval on something we already had.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I understand what you mean. And you kind of mentioned two very important things. First is you gave the example of Socrates. In one of the monologues that I've done on the podcast, I mentioned Socrates as one of my biggest inspirations. It's one of the things about Socrates is that he says that he knows nothing, and that's why he's open to literally every single perspective out there, and if he sees something false, then he won't do it. That's why I think it's important that you mentioned Socrates there. And the other thing that you mentioned, which I find interesting, is having epistemic humility. Now epistemology, as far as I understand it, is, say you have a truth, and epistemology is how you reach that truth. Basically, it's a tool that gives you to decipher wheat, or to separate the wheat from the chaff. So in essence, one could say that philosophy equips you with tools to understand what is important to you, or to understand what is the truth. And in your own podcast, I've seen that you discuss a lot of Hindu philosophy. You also discuss some Western philosophy, but I think you've not done Eastern philosophy a lot, right? Um,
Well, depends. I mean, my monologues till now have only been about Hindu philosophy. I've covered three
mhm.
darshans. I've covered Charvak, Mimamsa, and Sankhya. I've
Yeah.
actually not covered any Western philosophy as a monologue. I
Mhm.
use examples of philosophy a lot
Mhm.
of times in my podcast because that's just how I look at things. Like when I'm having a conversation even about a law, like
Mhm.
for me, my argument on freedom of expression is not a legal argument. My argument on freedom of expression is a philosophical argument, an argument based on morality and ethics, an argument based on first principles, that this makes more sense than what you present as an argument. So
Correct.
my podcast, I will, whenever I give arguments, so I
Mhm.
am taking my lessons of
Mhm.
philosophy that I have taken over the years,
Mhm.
and I add them wherever I can. So my questions stem from that. So that
Mhm.
is why on my podcast I always ask questions that are more into the moral ethical realm, or in the realm of where, okay, if you say this, then justify ABC. Like
Mhm.
people always use I'll give you an example. People,
Okay.
when it comes to free speech in India, people always use what I call the Kamlesh Tiwari. What about Kamlesh Tiwari?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
argument, they'll take the Kamlesh Tiwari argument. So I
Mhm.
always counter them. Okay, granted, there is one side that is violent, and there
Yeah.
is disproportionately more violent than the other
Mhm.
side.
Mhm.
I will grant you that. Now
Mhm.
here's my point: how do you reduce their violence
Mhm.
by stopping criticism over here? You don't.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
violence remains the same. The only way that violence can be challenged is, A, you fix the law and order, or
Yeah.
B, you actually make it so open that
Mhm.
if everybody starts criticizing religion, how
Mhm.
many are you going to kill? Eventually you reach the law of diminishing proportions, and then what happens is, how free speech works is, you keep crossing lines and
Mhm.
society keeps getting used to it, and in that process it's not clean. Blood will
Mhm.
be spilt. That, I
Yeah.
mean, even the American nation was built on a civil war.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even India was built on a humongous freedom struggle with the British, where millions of people and their blood was spilled.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about? No good thing comes out of
Mhm.
a scenario where there is no blood spilled. So
Mhm.
obviously there's going to be blood to be spilled, but look at the higher aim. The
Yeah.
higher aim is a society with more freedom. So I'm just using freedom of expression as an example. But
Mhm.
what I try to do in my podcast is, I use my lessons of philosophy and I
Mhm.
ask questions that lead people to think and make their arguments more robust. What
Mhm.
eventually happens is they fall back to their emotions, then
Yeah.
first principles, and that's with most people. I,
Mhm.
I i am not attached to my arguments beyond a point. If somebody gives a better argument, I will change my mind in a jiffy.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not attached to my arguments like some people are. Oh boy, they are attached to their arguments as if they're their own children.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we notice that quite a lot. I mean, people kind of attach themselves to the argument as if it's a part of their own personality. And well, I was leading to with that Western philosophy and Hindu philosophy point was that we speak a lot, not just on, I mean, on your podcast and social media as well, and a lot of different places about there are a lot of differences between Abrahamic faiths and their philosophies and their religious claims and uh, overall their entire civilizational values and Hindu values. But what I wanted to ask was, are there any similarities that you see in the kind of tools that they use? Ultimately, because they're religions on both sides, so there have to be some similarities as well. So apart from faith in some supernatural being and everything, do you see any similarities in epistemic tools that they use? Because okay, please explain. Yeah.
So it depends. So Abrahamic faith's key philosophy is very different. So what they did was like the scholastics, right? They used Greek philosophy and Greek arguments, and they kind of twisted it around, and they try to incorporate it in Christianity. But to be very honest, I think there is no common ground between the two religions, even at a philosophical level, because they are so fundamentally different from each other. Because one is exclusivist and the other is pluralist. There is no common ground between the both. I mean, other than the superficial, some believe in a supernatural deity and others. And even in that case, Hinduism does not have that case. No? Hinduism has disbelieving schools inside their pantheon. So honestly, at a philosophical level, yeah, you will find commonalities between Greek philosophy and Hindu philosophy. There you will find the commonality. Now, if you want to superimpose that Greek philosophy, which has been kind of smuggled into Christianity through scholastics like Thomas Aquinas and many others, and then you want to say, okay, that is common and this is common, then I don't know. Like a lot of times I was reading Aurobindo and Aurobindo's views on education and his philosophy on how education should be conducted. And if somebody reads how Plato recommended or Socrates recommended how education should be conducted, you will see multiple similar points on how it should be student focused. Teacher should be a tool of just pushing the student to the right direction. The language of education, many things. I'm not saying Aurobindo took it from Socrates or Plato. Do not get me wrong. I'm just saying I found similarities there. So that way you'll find a lot of like Greek monism is very clearly coming from Upanishads. They were influenced by the Upanishads, and Greeks took that monism from Upanishads. So their monistic thought is very much inspired by Eastern thought. But I don't know how much of that do you want to, because look, Abrahamic religions were deeply inspired by Zoroastrianism. So now somebody wants to say, okay, Zoroastrianism was like some kind of a offshoot of Indian thought, and then Zoroastrian. So they will have more influence from Zoroastrianism than anything else. I personally, at a deep philosophy where their tools, their pramanas, like our praman system. So you might find some, but those are all things they took from the Greeks. So can I call them Abrahamic? Those were Greeks. They stood independently, irrespective of Abrahamic religions.
I understand what you mean. So eventually, any sort of discussion of this eventually lands up into us talking about religions. And it was interesting that you mentioned that this Zoroastrianism, some people would say that it gets a lot of its inspiration from Hindu thought and Hindu philosophy and all of those things. And and one more point that you mentioned was that in Hindu philosophy also embraces disbelief. But every day we keep seeing people who speak not just on social media but on other places as well, that the moment you say that you don't believe, you cease being a Hindu. And I've also actually kind of heard you make this point a lot of times on your podcast, on Twitter as well, that according to you, the basis of being a Hindu is mutual respect and reciprocity. I mean, like a philosophical basis of being a Hindu is mutual respect and reciprocity. But my question with respect to that would be, but you can derive a mutual respect and reciprocity argument purely from a Greek thought as well. So just because a person believes in both of those things, would it be correct to consider that person a Hindu? Or you can
I think even if they want to believe in mutual respect, reciprocity, and ahimsa,
Mhm.
I think they should be considered Hindu too. Why should we restrict ourselves? Any human being for that matter. The problem runs with Christianity and Islam. They don't believe in mutual respect and reciprocity. Greeks would never have a problem. I am so very open about that. See, for me, I've addressed this in my monologue, Who is a Hindu? I want to
Mhm.
keep the Hindu identity loose, and you want to have your rules and regulations about belief in X food
Mhm.
item, belief in Y tenant, whether it's reincarnation or anything, keep it at the Panthic level.
Yeah, yeah.
So that way you can say you are not a Vaishnavite, you are not a Shaivite, you are not a Gauda Vaishnavite, you are
Mhm.
not a Sankhya, you are not Mimamsa, you are not Charvaka, that kind of. Keep it at the level of your Sampradaya or Panth.
Okay.
Hindu, keep it as a loose identity, which is more fluid, so that
Mhm.
it attracts more people. Now, there might be conservative people who will not agree with me, so be it. And I have been a disbeliever now for at least 20 years of my life. So I'm used to people telling me I'm not a Hindu.
Mhm.
My whole retort to them is best
Mhm.
of luck. At least 10 to 15% people in India
Mhm.
unofficially must be disbelievers. You
Wow, it's a
want to
huge
remove.
number.
Yeah, it's always around the world. See, the reason they don't come out in the census and say मैं हिंदू नहीं हूँ is because the culture says तुम हिंदू हो. So
Okay.
other than these few people online who have become neo ठेकेदार्स and certification agencies,
Yeah.
it's okay. Who cares? I don't care about them. They should
Mhm.
not care about me. It's a battle of ideas. My ideas will win. I think they think their ideas will win. And look, at the end of the day,
Mhm.
you can't whine about Hindu numbers reducing on one side and then reduce the numbers yourself. That has to be the stupidest argument I've heard in my life, and that's what they're giving. But again,
Mhm.
first principles and clarity has never been a strength of some of those people, so
Yeah.
it's okay. I mean, their argument. See, if you actually were to run your arguments through in your head like I do, and
Mhm.
try to find counters to your own argument like I
Mhm.
do, and that
Mhm.
is not my uniqueness. That is what philosophy trains you. It
Okay.
trains you to run an argument and then run counters in your head and then run it again and again and again and then present your argument. That's a tool that you develop,
Mhm.
and it's just not there, and it's fine. I mean, if they think that disbelievers are not part of the Hindu pantheon, then of
Mhm.
the old 9 darshanas,
Mhm.
5 were disbelievers of some sort. And the funny
Okay.
part is, I kind of agree with Dawkins. Dawkins has always said that
Mhm.
everybody is a disbeliever in some way or the other because they disbelieve something or the other sect. So I don't know.
True.
These definitions are very weird. Even
Mhm.
when it comes to reincarnation,
Mhm.
it's not like a universal understanding of reincarnation exists. The Buddhist definition of reincarnation,
Mhm.
because Buddhist philosophy is anatman, not
Okay.
self. They believe there is no self, and their
Okay.
entire argument for reincarnation is very different, let's say, from the Jaina or mainstream Hindu thought. There is humongous differences. Are
Okay.
Buddhists Hindus or not? I don't know. These people need to decide. If they say belief in a supernatural deity is their qualifying criteria,
Mhm.
Sankhya, Mimamsa, Jain, Buddhist, Charvak,
Mhm.
five are out. Why are they doing this? I don't know. They just want to say things
Yeah.
because I guess it gets them numbers or whatever. I don't know their aim in life is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the point is these are bad arguments. These are bad arguments not based on evidence. And most people, whether it's atheists or
Mhm.
theists, they
Mhm.
don't read. They just,
Yes.
yeah, they give arguments based on their, like, I mean, I've heard stupid people coming to me and saying, "आप atheist हो, आपकी morality कहाँ से आती है?" What kind of a question is this? How do you respond to something like that? I was like, पता नहीं, मैं अभी तक तो, once I had told someone, अभी बस आदमी को खा के आया, फिर suddenly मेरे को अच्छा नहीं लगा taste. What do
Mm.
you tell such people?
Yeah. Yeah.
They think that morality actually stems from religion because they believe religion is given to them by God. They don't realize it was written by human beings a few thousand years ago. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And my morality comes from the same way their morality comes from evolution.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've heard you make this argument before also. I think that you have done an entire monologue on why we should be good in a godless universe. I think that was what it was called, and it basically explained where morality comes from, even if we don't consider God as the origin of the morality. But yeah, again, it runs into the same thing that there are some of these principles, and again, as you mentioned, evolution. So a lot of our morality really actually stems from evolution. So if you make a completely secular argument, even then it is completely valid. But we see a lot of resistance to these ideas by the people. And eventually, it's my personal opinion that you can only improve the situation of, I mean, the situation regarding this by convincing people that not necessarily how they are wrong, but how they could be, more closer to the truth by accepting these. And somehow I feel that people resist this a lot. Do you think there is a way in which people can be explained, we can explain to people that, it's not necessary to have a belief in God in order to be moral or things like that?
I think the best way they realize is when they become friends with someone.
Hmm. Hmm.
They see this person is very moral, never breaks any moral code, is
Hmm.
very kind, and
Hmm.
then one day they happen to find out, oh, this guy is a disbeliever. They get a shock, and then they come to terms with it, and then they realize, okay, yeah, ये तो भगवान में नहीं मानता, फिर भी ये moral है. So मतलब you can be moral without that. So
Hmm.
then they come, but what they say is, and this is where I kind of actually agree with the religious people.
Hmm. Hmm.
What they say is, you at an individual level
Hmm. Hmm.
can be like that.
Okay.
But can a society be like that at a meta level? There, even I am kind of, skeptical that I don't think so. A godless society is really an ideal society, to be very honest. It pisses atheists off like crazy when I say that. But I don't know. Wherever I've seen godless societies, they seem to suck.
I mean, yeah, but I've kind of not understood this argument very well. I mean, because what people say is, now there are these arguments that I've seen online. Okay, arguments between two kinds of people. So the non-religious people or the disbelieving people say that religion kills a lot of people, and then they point to all the numbers of this religious terrorism that we see every day, or just like cow lynchings and everything. They'll point out everything that religion makes people do. And then on the other side, what people say is that non-religious people or atheistic people also have killed, and then what they do is cite numbers of people who were killed by communists in, say, Russia or China. I mean, do you think that is really valid? It's not because they were
No,
believers in some
they did
religion that
not
they were
kill
killed,
because
right?
of their disbelief. They did not kill because of their disbelief, but that's not my point. My
Hmm.
point is that
Hmm.
disbelievers refuse to acknowledge the value of religion. See,
Okay.
I will listen to such rubbish arguments from disbelievers where they say, well, you can find meaning outside religion. And I'll be like, okay, what? They're like, music. I was like, okay, go ahead. Sport. Okay, go ahead. And then I just tell them, name one religious person that does not have music. Name one religious person that does not have sport. They do it beyond these things. And the biggest proof of the pudding is in the eating. Look at what's happening in the West.
Hmm.
They have become by and large godless societies, and
Yeah.
religion is see, nature abhors vacuum. When
Yeah.
one big meta narrative is killed, it is
Hmm.
replaced by another meta narrative. And wokeism is what? It is religion.
Exactly.
You don't like it, is just godless, it is religion.
Hmm.
Religion is here to stay.
Hmm.
The point is, now maybe wokeism will also evolve, it will also have new amendments, and it will also evolve, but the point is, nature abhors in vacuum. So instead of hating religion, you need to go straight to the point. And like it, let us look at COVID at this time.
Okay.
The amount of sanity religious people have
Hmm.
at times like this,
Hmm.
because they believe in some supernatural deity, it is a
Hmm.
real anchor to them.
Yeah.
And to dismiss it as
Mhm.
stupidity is where I disagree with the atheists. You have to understand the value they get out of it. They draw, it is like a scaffolding of their life
Yeah.
that they believe in it. So
And-
don't mock it,
Hmm.
understand it. You personally can go get out. And to
Okay.
religious people, what I always say is,
Hmm.
understand that not everybody is buying your Kool-Aid. And some people are more than happy
Hmm.
not believing in your booga booga, and they can
Okay.
still draw meaning out of a larger society where you guys have kind of made the. So I will be very honest. I think both sides have their blind spots. And what ideally should happen, see, religion used to tarnish disbelievers. Disbelievers eventually won in some ways. Now I think disbelievers are becoming too rigid.
Yeah.
The ideal equilibrium is where both sides kind of believe in live and let live, kind of a scenario where they draw a white flag. But it's never going to happen. You'll always have these things. As long as I'm allowed to see, my take on this at the end of the day is, as long as I'm allowed to be left alone in my corner where I can do what I want to do, I don't care. You guys can bang your heads on the wall. Beyond a point, I could care less.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and you make a very good point about how wokeism itself is a different religion. that I mean, they mimic religious behavior to such a level that it really looks like a new religion unto itself. And I mean, a lot of people among these works are also, I mean, they kind of profess like atheistic beliefs and everything, but it's I mean, don't you find it a little funny that they are becoming exactly like the people who they resist in a way? So it's like a kind of horseshoe theory being proven, right?
They will naturally now. Their life were they'll see what is happening right now in America is not a crisis of ideas. It's a crisis of meaning. These young kids have lost meaning in their life. They're
Okay.
finding meaning through this. See, we have real problems when we live in our countries. So we have like real shit happening around us. They have nothing. So they are finding pain and suffering and they're blowing it out of proportion and they're creating it. And this is their new meaning. Their religion is wokeism. And it's fine. Let them live their life the way they want to live. But they will see the damages and eventually society will self-correct itself, those societies.
Well, societies will self-correct themselves is actually, I mean, it's an optimistic thing to say, but do you really think that will happen? Because considering what just happened in the US in the past few days, I mean, basically what you saw was first wokeism went to town. They destroyed Trump in every way that they could. I mean, I'm giving an example of Trump because it's the most proximate thing that people can actually relate to. And then, I mean, it went to such a level that they maligned Trump on every level for constantly for 4 years. And then as a response to that, what we saw was ardent supporters of Trump who eventually rioted and went and stormed the Capitol Hill. So do you really think that society will self-correct or it will just keep polarizing as we are seeing it now? Because until now,
It will polarize for a little longer. It will polarize for a little longer. But
Okay.
then I always ask people, can you live your life on nihilism?
Well, but it's not exactly nihilism, right? I mean, they still have their own beliefs. They have their woke beliefs or whatever I mean, they think. Because it's not like all of them are like a monolith, but they still have some kind of belief, right? And what we
Yeah,
see.
but they keep eating their own. You can't live your life on purity and pollution because you'll keep on driving people nuts and eventually people will be like, kya kar kya raha hai? Pagal hai kya? So it's natural. Beyond a point, people will push back and normal people will push back. Everything has its own cycle. Like they had the witch hunts. Eventually, technically, then the witch hunt should have lasted forever. They did not. In India, untouchability did not last forever. Eventually, people push back. They're like, what the hell are you doing? So it will happen to this also. See, human beings don't like to live in suffering. Only nihilists do. And most of the nihilists are on social media. So we start superimposing those nihilistic people. See, nihilists are very vocal. You have to give it to them.
Okay.
They're the most vocal people. They always want the world to be destroyed because they don't have anything positive to offer. So they believe sabko jala do, sab kuch laga do.
Wow.
So the point is, you keep listening to the nihilists. You think the world is like that. The world is not like that. Everybody is having vada pav in the corner. They are very happy.
Yeah.
So the point is, we need to realize that there is something called an aggregate reality and there is something called an individual reality.
Correct.
Now at an aggregate level, societies are by and large peaceful and they're going on becoming peaceful.
Yeah.
The problem is wokeism is there because इतनी peaceful society हो गई है. हमारे यहाँ पे भी जो rich बच्चे हैं, क्या problem है उनको उनकी life में? Middle class and upper middle class and above Indians को problem क्या है life में? उनको कोई problem है? उनका तो गाड़ी भी वो नहीं चलाते हैं, driver चला रहा है उनका. So the issue is when you run out of suffering, you simulate, create suffering. So these kids are doing that. They will eventually realize that this is not going to work. I don't know when they will realize. That's not my problem. That's their problem. By the time, maybe in my lifetime, they may not, but that's okay. Who cares? The point is to extrapolate this and say, I mean, let's look at, now I believe Islamism is a threat. But look at what's happening in the Arab world. The Arab world is becoming more liberal or more conservative.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're seeing trends towards it going towards the liberal side.
So the point is, every time, now somebody might come back, but Turkey is going the opposite way. Yes, some societies go one way, some societies go the other. The point is, nature is the way it is. It keeps swinging from one pendulum to the other. In India, you had this Congress Raj for so many years. People got fed up, they kicked them out. अभी तो ऐसा हो गया कि कांग्रेस मेरे को लगता है म्युनिसिपैलिटी भी हार जाने वाली है. The point is,
Yeah.
but even this BJP Raj will not last forever. This will also
Sure.
be kicked out,
Yeah.
because that is how nature is. People get fed up. They want something new. Something will pop up. There is a
Yeah.
vacuum. That vacuum will be filled. So, as my whole point is, you stick to your principles. And
Yeah.
as long as you maintain that structure of society, where I always say this to my conservative friends, I was like, look, your conservative template does not have space for me. My open plural template has a space for you and me. So which template is better?
Yeah.
A template where both of us can survive, or in a template where you want to purge me completely off my mind? So I'm never going to agree with you. Definitely at an objective level, my template is better, because my template will allow you if you believe in Pashubali. My template will allow you if you believe in your religious beliefs. My template says just leave me alone
Yeah.
and give me the freedom to criticize your ideas while you criticize my ideas. That's a better template.
Sure.
What they believe is that I don't like what you hear. I will purge you. I will shut you down. And when I use the word conservative, I mean it in a religious sense.
Religious
And
conservatives.
woke people are religious conservatives. I do not call them liberals. Woke people are religious conservatives. They should be called that. And not all conservatives are bad. I think most conservatives are very open-minded. But there are these ultra-orthodox, crazy, cookie conservative kinds who want to superimpose their world view on everyone else.
Yeah.
These are the people I'm talking about. So I want to be very specific. Conservatives are good people. Most people, even religious conservatives, fiscal conservatives, religious conservatives. So many of my friends are religious conservatives. They have never imposed their worldview on me. But there is this new breed in town. It stems from Islamism, and everybody is copying this Islamist ideology, and I hate it. I despise it. I don't like anybody imposing. So I always try to tell them, have an open template. An open template has space for more people. Yes, that doesn't mean everything goes like kill people. No. But we know the lines. The lines are not that blurry. And unfortunately, again, it stems from, I think, lack of first principles in most human beings. And they just talk nonsense all the time.
Yeah, I mean that happens a lot of times. So part of my effort actually with my own podcast is I want to explore some of these first principles on my own as well. So I mean I've done a few monologues. One is on free speech, and I'm a, what do we say, almost a free speech absolutist, except there are a few red lines that we all know which not to cross. They are, given by the harm principle and everything. Then there are some other principles that are not quite as often discussed at a philosophical level. What people do is they tend to bring in some quote unquote realist aspects to them. So for example, secularism. So there is a standard definition of secularism in the world, that the separation of church and state, that is where my understanding is that secularism comes from. But now, I mean, everyone knows that in India, that meaning has been corrupted. So it basically has turned into what do we say, an appeasement of the non-Hindu side. So whichever it may be Muslims or it may be Christians. But what happens because of that is that the principle itself gets forgotten. And then people develop such a resistance to the word secularism itself that they don't see that the word itself has value. And we would be better off with secularism than having a theocratic society. But I mean,
see, what we have in India is not secularism.
Sure,
what we have in India is anti-Hinduism. Let's be very clear. Let's be very open about what the Indian state is built on. The Indian state was built on the hatred of this native civilization. That is the founding, one of the founding elements of the state. A state that wants to control temples and not other religious places, only Hindu temples. A state that actively believes in interfering in every matter of Hindu religion.
Yeah.
A state that does not believe in common civil laws is a anti-Hindu state. Let me be very open and very clear there. The point is that if the word secularism is sullied, call it something else. But just give us the good version, is my point. I am not attached to words so much.
Yeah. I mean,
I am someone. Work. Yeah, you call it Haggu, but give me what it is.
Yeah.
The point is, what is the definition below Haggu? That's my point. Yeah. The current definition below secularism in India is worse than Haggu.
Yeah.
So that's my point. People get attached to the word. I say don't get attached to the word. Get attached to what that word denotes.
Yeah.
I support the secularism that is practiced in America more than France.
Okay.
And I like that version. I like the freedom of speech that's practiced in America. I'm not saying everything in America is fine. I'm not someone who is attached to everything they do. But the point is that those principles are much better. And if we want a society, like I believe India is a Hindu Rashtra civilizationally, but I don't want that to go beyond a point in my governance, because I see problems in governance stemming from that itself. And
Yeah.
I've given arguments based on that. The
Sure.
point is people don't want to accept that. Like, people don't understand, if you form a theocratic state, then you will have to define your culinary laws. You'll have to define everything. And then why will one religious subsect of Hinduism's culinary taste not be more valid than the other sect? Like, I don't get it. Why do these people not understand something as basic as this? Then it will become a situation where, let's say, the majority of people in India are Vaishnavites. Over a period of time, Vaishnavites outbreed everyone else. Then Vaishnavites eventually will lead to a situation in India. They'll say, no, onion garlic should not be allowed. It should be the state policy. I'm not saying they'll do it. I'm just drawing a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
don't these people understand something as basic as this? This is my problem with people. And this is where it all boils down to lack of first principles. They don't run an argument through their brain in a processed way. And
Yeah.
this is why secularism, of what I understand, is the state will treat everybody as an individual. It will not go out of the way for any particular group. And if everybody is an individual in the eye of the state, and then, yes, then we can have a separate debate where I am totally on board that India's civilizational identity is Hindu. If you don't like it, you can go to hell.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, when you say that you visualize a secular state like every person being treated as an individual and not as a part of a group. But I mean, just to give you the other side, in the constitution itself, we've been guaranteed justice of social nature as well. So we have a concept of social justice right in the constitution. So how would you square that? Because those things, individual justice and social justice, there are a lot of situations where they may clash with each other. How would you resolve that? Because,
But it's simple, right? Discrimination also is of two types. There is negative discrimination, there is positive discrimination. So in this case, I think John Rawls had this concept of positive discrimination, and I think reservation is a classic case of positive discrimination.
Exactly.
To take care of social injustice. So I see no problem in that. But the point is that reservation has to be based on data, and it has to be based on hard data. So there might be cases where some castes don't deserve reservation and others do, but that's just the failure of the Indian state, not this, because the Indian state has not done a proper caste consensus, tabulation since 1930s. After that, we've just not done it. And when you have a system as it is, this is why I said India is not a secular state. India is just a left-wing, semi-authoritarian fascist state that pretends to be secular, and everybody seems to be using the word. I don't understand what we are beyond a point now.
Yeah.
It's just a waste. And what India needs right now is actually a re-education process of its entire youth, where they need to be told the value of freedom. Indians don't understand freedom. Look what's happening under the garb of COVID. There is a curfew from 11 to 6 announced randomly, as if COVID is like Shahenshah or Raat ko nikalta hai.
Yeah, this is the most inexplicable thing ever. So 19 hours in a day, 17 hours in a day, it's not active, and 7 hours a day, it's active.
Or take another example. Mumbai local is not started. Everybody knows that people are going illegally in trains. I mean, how many people are going to say that? वो लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, उनका सिस्टम कैसा है? बोलता है देखो टीटी के साथ भी सेटिंग कर लिया, हफ्ते में एक बार फाइन भरूंगा, 6 दिन जाने दे.
Wow.
So what are you going to do? Because like I said, nature abhors vacuum.
Yeah.
Everybody is using, but government will say, nah, allowed nahi hai train. Everybody is flocking to the buses. कौन सी social distancing? This is why I say, when your policy making or when your arguments are devoid of first principles, are devoid of data, are devoid of basic logic, you do these things. And if anything, India is a classic example of a plethora of such people who are not just in the society, they are in the government.
Yeah. I think we really put the worst of our people in the government. I mean, it's my personal feeling, but I really think that is the case. I mean, if you look at it, and I had this question in my mind. I mean, like you mentioned that government does like everything about, especially about these COVID rules, they're just doing it haphazardly and just because they can. It points to like some sort of a megalomania on the part of the government, that they have power and then they want to use it and they want to do anything. And I see a problem in that, because it is very difficult to get back any power that we have already given to the government. Like,
I know.
yeah, so you were saying something.
No. So I was just exasperated because I know I've been crying about this since May. Look, I was in total support of a lockdown in April because I didn't know. But then I found out the data. I was like, okay, lockdowns seem to kill more people, and I'll explain why. So we need social distancing in India, at least in urban centers. Okay, you could maybe have a lockdown in rural India where you can actually socially distance. In a city like Mumbai, 68% of the population lives in slums.
Wow.
47% of India is urban. In that 47%, even if you take a conservative estimate that 50% of that 47% of India cannot physically practice social distancing any time of the day. Who the hell thought lockdowns was a good idea in urban India? That means half of India cannot practice social distancing. You basically packed them in the one place where there is the worst density of population. अभी क्या बोलोगे? सांस लेना बंद कर दो. अभी तू सांस ले. अभी तू सांस ले. अभी फिर तू सांस ले. Who was making this policy when you knew a virus as infectious as this was existing? It shows that we did not. And now the government, just under the garb of that, has taken so many of your powers away. We were already an authoritarian society. People have made it even more authoritarian because the government scared the shit out of you. I am not undermining. I am a person who wears a mask 12 hours a day. I am pro mask. I am pro hand washing. I am pro all precautions that you can take. But Baba, you want to have first world realities in a third world country?
Yeah.
How is that poor slum dweller going to manage social distancing? How is the Mumbai bus or the Mumbai local going to, how are we going to, see, we have to understand beyond a point, we are a poor, see this, it's such a shameful thing. Pakistan understood this more than us.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't do anything with respect to these lockdowns and everything, but I don't think they understood. I think they just didn't know what to do. I mean,
they were like, कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता, लोग सुनेंगे ही नहीं. They were like, nobody's going to listen. जिसको मरना होगा मरेगा. Apparently मरते भी नहीं लोग. Apparently it seems like if you have a younger population, which we are, Pakistan to average age is 21, India is 27 and a half. We don't seem to die. Secondly, it kills more obese people. हमारे यहाँ मोटे भी नहीं है. तो हम तो पतले सुखड़े हैं, हम तो malnourished लोग हैं. It's just, I'm not saying it's the luck of the draw. What should scare us is what if we get a bubonic plague like COVID infection rates? Then we are done. India is completely done. Yeah, then those first world countries can survive because they actually can physically distance from each other. We can't.
Yeah,
we
and
should
also
never have done this.
Ready.
Yeah. Now in a country like ours, we have random curfews. We have random rules in a gymkhana. You can play X sport, not Y sport. In the change room, you can use your locker but cannot shower. These are central government guidelines, not state. Center has given these guidelines. I have read them. You cannot shower in a gym. क्यों नहाने से क्या होगा? Gym में तो हूँ. Nothing makes sense anymore. And the citizenry of this country has not been taught. See, citizens in this country love one thing, voting. हम जाएगा 5 साल में एक बार वोट करेगा. Their definition of democracy is I will choose my person every 5 years, and they're very, very, very rigid about that. That they will not give up. But that's just a tip. Below that are freedoms. They don't care. They are happy when government say liquor ban. Why? Who gave this brilliant idea to Bihar? This is where people are not educated. In India, this is my firm belief now. And this is my belief not just with social media interactions. This is off social media. In my work in slums in Mumbai or in villages in India, people have not been taught what freedom is.
Hmm.
They've been actually, they are scared. They've been given the fear that if you give too much freedom, society becomes anarchist. That is a load of rubbish. There is no evidence that free societies are more anarchic. You can see anarchy daily in Mumbai local.
Yeah, there's nothing to impose any kind of a law there, so it looks like entirely an anarchical situation. Yeah,
That's
but
the thing.
but I would
No,
like
no,
to
go
just
ahead. Go ahead.
cross question you on one thing, just to play devil's advocate. You just mentioned that there's no evidence to say that Western societies are more anarchical, but I've heard of, some people, some of my friends on social media say this, that we've been constantly seeing protests, some or the other kind of protests in the US for a long time now, especially since that poor guy George Floyd was killed by that police officer. So there's constant protests, and a lot of them are riots. They're burning police buildings. So people make this point that since people in America have too much freedom, so people have used this phrase in front of me, that since they have too much freedom, they're descending into anarchy, and that is why too much freedom is bad. I've heard
Okay,
people make this argument. What would you
so
say to that?
because they are living in a social media echo chamber where the algorithm only shows them anarchy all the time, so they are convinced. Ask anybody who lives in US, there must be a riot बाजू में, उनके घर में कुछ हो ही नहीं रहा है. So this is a load of rubbish. जैसे मैं तुमको एक analogy देता हूँ, अमेरिका में ना, there used to be this Gangs of America program.
Okay.
The Crips versus वो जो भी होते थे. मेरे को लगता था इतने बड़े गैंग होंगे, दाऊद इब्राहिम जैसे, मतलब जो इतना बड़ा नेटवर्क होगा. बाद में पता चला 4 ब्लॉक ये कंट्रोल करता है, 2 ब्लॉक वो कंट्रोल करता है, वो एक दूसरे को मारते जा रहे हैं. ऐसे बनाया हुआ जैसे पता नहीं पूरा शहर उनके अंडर है. So a lot of things is, you have to understand, America loves to market its anarchy too. It's highly overrated. America is good at marketing everything, the good and the bad of America. So it convinces people that, everything. So it can convince you both ways. Secondly, if I start showing you videos of things in India, you will believe India mein casteism is all over, right, left, upper, down, everywhere. These arguments are not based on data. There was more crime in America in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s than it is now. You might have had a spike of crimes now because of this and defund the police. That I'm willing to accept. But it will be purged when it goes beyond hand. There was a latest survey where 80% of African Americans want more cops.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, not less cops. To say that American society likes anarchy, using the example of the George Floyd murder, is insulting African Americans who want more cops.
True. Yeah. But again, then if you shift your attention back to India, even here, since last year, no, not last year, it's 2021 now. So 2019 December, we've again been seeing constantly these protests. There was the CAA protests, and then now we have these farmer protests, which is this complete sham. I think they're just stealing generators and donating to Gurudwaras. I don't even understand what is going on there. But again, this could be used to make a point that India actually, I mean, there's a greater merit to say that in India the state capacity is hampered. So there's there's a reason that people don't have that much freedom, because even right now people are rioting on the streets.
But even in India, there is no anarchy.
Yeah, I mean, but people would say that, right? Because since some people are so, I think they just have the strength of numbers that they are gathering in some places and rioting all over the place, near Delhi and in Punjab and everywhere.
India has 130 crore people. You can always find a mob that will try to make your point and put the government down. So that is the thing about India. India में अगर तुमको anti-mask wearers समझ लो, कोई प्योर लिबर्टेरियन मिल गए पागल, जो प्योर एनार्को कैपिटलिस्ट होते हैं, वो भी तुमको 5 लाख मिल जाएंगे. अभी वो भी 5 लाख आ गए जंतर मंतर में, तो लगे हाय 5 लाख आ गए, अब क्या करेंगे हम, जंतर मंतर में 5 लाख लोग आ गए. अभी पॉपुलेशन ही इतनी है कि हर चीज में इंडिया एक ऐसा देश है, उधर हर चीज में नंबर मिल जाता है यार. So India में how do you gauge? Look at the percentage. Even in the farmers protest, how many farmers are supporting them? So what is the protest? The government is managing it in a wrong way, in my opinion. The government should just tell them, see, what the government needs to tell them is, these are your spots, squat there forever. That's your democratic right. These roads are not going to be blocked. If you block the roads, we will beat you. It's the fault of the government. In fact, this is to say, it's the same thing happened in America. They let the rioters riot. because it was clear it was a political decision.
Yeah.
Most cities were governed by Democrats.
Yeah.
The Democrats were playing vote bank politics. I mean, nobody is that that much of a novice. It's quite clear.
Mhm.
And this is what is happening. But to extrapolate that everything is ascending in anarchy is wrong.
Yeah.
Societies are not anarchic, and
Mhm.
let's see what happens. See, if these people are right, in 10 years, the democracies will collapse. I can tell you, they're not going to collapse. There is no
Yeah.
data to show that.
Yeah.
For a civil war to happen,
Mhm.
in fact, there are certain conditions that are
Mhm.
needed to be qualified for a civil war to happen.
Okay.
And no good sociological book
Hmm.
is predicting that America is going to civil war. Only on social media, people keep talking about it.
Yeah. Social media, I mean, you can get away by saying anything on social media, and you were right that in a lot of places in the US, there were some city councillors, I think in some city in Minnesota itself, that they actually prevented the police from taking any kind of action against the rioters, and then police bhi aise हाथ ऊपर करके बाहर आ गए कि भाई we cannot protect you, you are on your own, citizens को बोल दिया. So it was clear that it was politically motivated and it was not spontaneous, as we could say.
Yeah,
But,
so इंडिया में नहीं हुआ है कितनी बार. आजाद मैदान के राइट्स में नहीं हुआ था. पुलिस वाज टोल्ड नॉट टू डू एनीथिंग.
Yeah, so these things keep happening. I mean, there's no saying what politicians may make the police people do or they may prevent them from doing. But one more thing, yeah, and you mentioned something very, very interesting to me, that uh, people in India appreciate democracy insofar as their voting right is concerned, but not beyond that. But say what we want is greater freedoms for people. We first want people to know what their freedoms are. Then we want them to actually actively push for greater freedoms toward and make the government take decisions in that way. So that we want more free speech, we want more free markets, we want more secularism, we want temple freedom and everything. But ultimately, in democracies like India, you have to go through the democratic way. So you have to convince people that they vote for the right person who will take all these decisions or at least raise these issues in the parliament. Do you see that really happening in India anytime soon?
Not in my lifetime. No, I'm sorry to sound so pessimistic, but I just don't see. There's no point. I mean, I see 295A going in 15 years because the right wing in India will use it so much now against stand-up comics that they'll be like, hey, nahi. So it will go. See, laws change in India when the left wants it to change.
Yeah.
Go. So, अभी already एक op-ed शुरू हो गया ना, वो कौन सा अर्बन टुच्चा. So he wrote that क्या नाम है, संजय रजोरा.
Oh.
He has that संजय रजोरा. So वही तो उसका ही बोर्ड है ना, अर्बन टुच्चा. So उसका हैंडल है शायद अर्बन टुच्चा. So उसकी भी गिगी निकल गई ना. So now he wrote an article, oh these laws should go. भाई क्या हो गया, तू तो माओवादियों की वायलेंस को एक शायद इंडियन एक्सप्रेस या किधर का इंटरव्यू था उसमें डिफेंड कर रहा था. क्या हो गया, गिगी निकल गई इतनी जल्दी तुमको. See, this is why I had filed a case against Vishal Dadlani ना. This was my brilliant plan. I was like, मैं ये केस फाइल करूंगा, मैं लोगों को बताऊंगा. I mean, it was so funny. I remember Times Now या किसने मेरे को कॉल किया था. So why have you filed a case, Mr. Mehra? I was like, yeah, my sentiments are hurt. So she was like, okay, you're a Jain. I was like, no. I was like, so you're a Hindu? I was like, no. मतलब yes, Hindu, but not a believing one. She's like, then why have you filed a case? I was like, I say, because it's there. The law is there. My sentiments, on behalf of Jain people, I have taken hurt sentiments. She's like, but that's not right. I was like, but the law is wrong. So remove the law.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. The law is so silly.
Yeah.
So now when sufficient number of Hindus will use this law and sufficient number of people's lives will be destroyed, like I said, no good things happens without blood being spilled or lives being destroyed. So this good thing will also happen when I'm very happy our stand-up comics, our woke Tucha stand-up comics are our new martyrs. Let them be martyred. I could care less.
Yeah.
As long as the law goes eventually. And when the law goes, everybody will have a free season. And then everybody will criticize whomsoever they want to criticize. After that, the second thing the Indians need to demand after freedom is law and order parallelly.
Yes.
Indians, imagine the Twitter discourse. If you do a tweet search, how many tweets in a day demand freedom of expression, police reforms, judicial reforms, and secularism? And how many tweets in a day say, tu Gaumitra pile, tu puncture wala hai, tu rice bag hai?
Yeah.
Just look at the discourse. everywhere in the world, it's not just India, everywhere in the world,
Hmm.
social media discourse is garbage.
Hmm.
And it is almost as if all the garbage people have come on social media and have said, we are the Raja here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but
So you can't educate people beyond a point.
hmm.
You just leave your thoughts in the sphere
Hmm.
and don't read your mentions after that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very peaceful strategy to use, not to read the mentions. But the strategy that you mentioned in order to eventually get 295A removed is that you file a lot of cases from the other side, from the Hindu side, and eventually when the left realizes that this is too much for us to take, then they will take steps towards that. Actually, that's a more probable thing than uh, BJP or a quote unquote non-left party doing it, because even in the case of this section 377 that we saw, it was not active participation from the side of BJP. They just said कि कोर्ट को करना है तो हम लोग बीच में नहीं आएंगे. But eventually those were not right-leaning people who eventually went to the Supreme Court and demanded removal of that.
No, you have to give credit where it's due. Where the
Hmm.
courts wrote to BJP, the
Hmm.
BJP could have said, no, we don't want this law written down, but they said, we will leave it to the court's wisdom.
Hmm.
Unlike the Congress in 2012, which specifically replied to the court, we do not want this law written down. It should stay on the statute book. So
Hmm.
you have to give credit to BJP where it's due,
Hmm.
albeit in a very weird way they got it done. Because
Hmm.
that's how the society is. Everything happens on wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah,
अभी
yeah.
ये क्या मैच फिक्सिंग की है? ये फार्मर्स प्रोटेस्ट में सुप्रीम कोर्ट में भेज दिया है. बीजेपी ने खुद किया है. ये बीजेपी को शर्म नहीं आ रही है, वो खुद कर रही है. उन्होंने कोर्ट को लेजिस्लेशन में इंटरफियर करने का क्या प्रेसिडेंट सेट कर दिया है? करो, क्योंकि इंडिया की पॉलिटिक्स ऐसी है. This is how we are. We are a work in progress as a democracy.
Hmm.
We are immature in many things. And
Hmm.
what do you do? See, beyond a point, when people tell me कि सुधारे कैसे, तो कितने जाहिलों को पढ़ाएं? जाहिल भरे हुए हैं इधर, ऊपर से लेकर नीचे तक जाहिल हैं. सबको बोलते रहो जाहिल. That's why my point is very simple now. I just say things and I move on. And beyond a point, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, who cares?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I understand that. Yeah, but I mean, there's a little flaw in the strategy that you mentioned, that you get our side, quote unquote, our side to file as many cases as they want, and then it gets done. But the thing with that is, I didn't know this earlier, that there's apparently a section in the CRPC which says that, I think it's CRPC 156, if I'm remembering it correctly, that the state or the central government has to approve any action on cases filed under section 295A or 153A. So now, if I'm understanding this law correctly, it says that even if you do file a 295A case, ultimately the state government or the central government will say whether or not that case will go forward. सो आपकी तरफ से अगर आप कर भी दोगे केस, तो भी गवर्नमेंट कैन डिसाइड कि भाई तुम्हारे केस में मेरिट नहीं है, खुद ही डिसाइड कर लेगी, एंड देन दे विल रिफ्यूज टू लेट दैट केस गो एनी फर्दर. सो आई एम नॉट वेरी ऑप्टिमिस्टिक अबाउट दैट पर्टिकुलर स्ट्रेटजी टू गेट 295A removed.
How can it not be? See, 18 states are BJP owned states. They love to torture other side people.
Yeah, I mean, but they don't do it, na. That's a primary.
Who said they don't do it? Check the number of cases filed under 295A. Now so many cases are being filed. It is open season now. Everybody is filing cases.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it happens. So I mean, I'm not in favor of 295A by any means. So I hope that really happens. But I'm just a little, skeptical about that strategy really working out.
There is a Twitter handle now called Hindu Legal Cell. They are actively searching for people who violate Hindu gods and goddesses, or call them names, and they go and file cases against them. So have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that strategy works and 295 eventually goes away. And speaking about strategies in which you could get more and more freedom given to people and all of those things, I think what you said is beyond a point. You cannot educate people to push for reform and push for more and more, push people to vote for people who will ensure them their freedom. And one of the things that we see is when you give the governments a mandate to do anything, they go 3-4 steps beyond. Like we saw in this UP anti-conversion law that we are seeing right now, otherwise I think known as love jihad laws or things like that. We're seeing some really weird cases that there are some cases where you don't even have evidence that there is some foul play going on, and even then there are cases and government is acting. So on one side you see a lot of cases where the government or the police doesn't act at all, and on the other side you see a hyperactive state which arrests people just because there is some suspicion that there's some wrong going on. I know you're going to do a podcast on that, but what are your views on that?
I think it is the classic case of overwork by the state, because in
Hmm.
India
Hmm.
सरकारी लोग सोचते हैं जनता को बताए देखो हमने कुछ किया,
Hmm.
और जनता सोचती है चलो अच्छा है इसने कुछ तो किया.
Yeah.
तो अगर मतलब जब प्रजा और नेता दोनों ही गधा हैं, सो ट्विडल टी और ट्विडल डम का जो कॉम्बिनेशन है हमारे
Hmm.
यहाँ पे, तो यही
Hmm.
होगा ना. लॉ तो कुछ नहीं है, गवर्नमेंट को एक और लॉ मिल गया, गवर्नमेंट अभी वो लॉ को यूज. सी व्हाट पीपल डोंट रियलाइज इज, कभी भी न्यूज पढ़ते हो एक आदमी को अरेस्ट करते हैं और उसके ऊपर कितने सेक्शन ठोक देते हैं.
हाँ.
सेक्शन की बारिश है हमारे यहाँ पे, एक सेक्शन जो लगते भी नहीं है, और इवेंचुअली क्या होता है इतने सेक्शन ठोक के आदमी को डरा देते हैं, बाद में वो कोर्ट में जाता है, लड़ते 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 आदमी साला बुढ़ा हो जाता है. So, see, how do you convince people? My biggest struggle for the next, I don't know how long I'm going to live, assuming I live for at least 20-30 years. The next few years or decades or 3 decades of my life, I want to come up with a way of convincing people about the value of freedom, and why
Yes.
don't agree with the government creating more laws.
Hmm.
The solution is not the government creating more laws. India में क्या हो रहा है मालूम है? The government does not fill the one vacuum where there is a vacuum, which is law and order.
Yeah.
The government tries to make up for that, stating, देखो ना हमने law बना दिया. अरे क्या law बना दिया यार? It's the worst kind of skullduggery that the government is doing. It's basically, and also you have to understand the level of, see, we cannot deny that there is systemic grooming in India. No,
Yeah.
anybody who denies it is a liar.
Sure.
There is grooming. What we cannot answer is, I don't know what the level of that grooming is. We just cannot know that. There is no data to justify any kind of thing. It might be 0.5% of the society, or 0.25 or 0.005% of the society. The point is, the government did not make that law because it wanted to plug a problem. The government did something political.
Yes.
It wants to show to its voters that, look, we are doing something. And the government thinks when people are polarized, that's how you win elections. And that's the strategy of the BJP right now. It is basically Hindu-Muslim polarization. Now, you can say it's a good strategy or a bad strategy. My whole point is that it doesn't help India in any way, these laws.
Yeah.
Because who the hell is the government to say who gets to marry whom? Now, if a person is systemically grooming someone, there are enough provisions in the law anyways to deal with that.
Yeah,
What
I
is
mean,
this new law going to add?
Exactly. So I don't understand. Their solution to every problem is make a new law. Are jo hai, already the laws that are present are not being implemented, and you want to make more and more and more laws so that people break more and more and more laws, and you still are not able to solve anything. I mean, especially about this um, police reform business. So there is a judgment, I think, in the Supreme Court. So it's Union of India versus Prakash Singh, if I remember correctly, 2005, and there are several suggestions given in that judgment, and we're not even ready to, you know, carry out all of those things. We're severely understaffed. The police is severely understaffed. They're undertrained. They're under-equipped, and we expect them to. I mean, everything we should expect, but and we expect them to control situations like we saw in Shaheen Bagh. How is it going to happen when we don't have that strength? I mean, I really don't.
There is not just one Supreme Court judgment. I think there was another in 2008, and beyond that, there are 3 committee recommendations that have been given for police reforms. No government, whether it's BJP, Congress, state level governments, the only government in India, in a very weird way, is the Yogi Adityanath government that has hired a lot of policemen since Yogi Adityanath has come under power. But that too, they came up with this love jihad law. So I don't know. See, it's just a weird mindset. I don't know what to do about this. I honestly, I always tell people, how am I going to convince them? Like, I use analogies. They just don't want to understand it, because what happens is, when your mind is convinced about groupthink, and then when you keep on doing, and look, Dunning-Kruger is real, and the backfire effect is also real. when you
True.
tend to give people new information, they tend to double down on their old beliefs.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, people tend to overestimate how much they know
Yes.
about a subject.
Mm-hmm.
So these are real problems. I don't know how to get out of it. The only way is you keep on talking about it, you
Mm-hmm.
keep on challenging these beliefs, and when sufficient number of people do it,
Mm-hmm.
I think eventually some people start coming on the other side. Like I started talking about it. Now I see there is a trickle down effect. More people come, more people come. So there are people who are craving for rational arguments. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when they hear a rational arguments, they come. So it is a slow run process. All I say is don't give up, just keep talking.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, now I'd like to come to our the final part of the discussion, and I'll just flip the focus of our discussion. Now it's on the other side, like you mentioned. We should constantly keep talking. I mean, if you really want to see some change happening, then we should all keep talking, keep convincing people, keep trying to convince people who don't really know these things a lot. And a major way in which people like me can do it is via social media. I mean, let's face it, we are I mean, I myself can speak for myself that I cannot go out and talk to like random people randomly. So the best way to do that for me is by social media. But now, just today we saw this, that I mean, we've been seeing this for quite some time, that social media is also a weird place. So they are now, they act as tech companies, but they're editorializing their content. And it has, I mean, in the US it is much more blatant that they suspended something around 70,000 accounts who were linked to some conspiracy theory. But I mean, I didn't understand why though, but they did. What I'm getting at is social media platforms, all of them, they, imagine that they suspended the account and permanently banned the president of the United States of America. So I mean, that's where they're showing their power basically. And then what happens is, eventually, we also know how Twitter India is also very active in kind of banning and suspending accounts in India as well. So because of that, what happens is, sometimes people who try to make even genuine points and say one thing here or there, and then the other side basically jumps at them, and then they report it. So they smell blood and they mass report channels and do all of these things. So what happens because of that is, even the rational discourse sometimes gets stifled because of that. And now the easy solution that many of us just talk about, but I don't know if it can be implemented, is to move to another app. Now we have had several attempts at making different apps, and people try to move to other apps. Now that other app, Parler, that was, I mean, even that is now offline now. There are some Indian versions of the apps, but eventually people will move to other platforms. Now, one of the platforms that I like is YouTube, because you can have like long discussions here. But I mean, do you really think that if social media continues with their megalomania again, that they have power and then they want to use it, so they just keep banning people? Do you think we can carry this on for a long time on
Oh
existing
yes,
social media?
absolutely. Arey Baba, there is a market. They will ban 40% of the market, 50% of the market. They
Mhm.
will all go to a new platform. Some billionaire somewhere will be like, Arey, there is a whole market. These people want to yell and scream on the internet. I will give them the opportunity. How
Mhm.
can they stop? They cannot stop.
Yeah, yeah.
It will be short-term turbulence. Long-term, nothing can stop. See, the thing is that what the social media platforms, I literally did a discussion on that today with Brad Palumbo.
Yeah, yeah.
So the point is, his point was very solid. He's like, look, you cannot say that they have to be editing their content, otherwise how are they going to run it? So imagine you upload a video, and Brad made a valid point. It's like, though they are supposed to go through every video, check whether it's good or not, and then make you upload it. How will their business run? So they
Mhm.
will have to make these haphazard decisions. Now
Mhm.
what is wrong is their ideology. So
Yeah.
if they trouble a X kind of ideology,
Mhm.
people will automatically go to the another other platform, because again, nature abhors vacuum. If there is a humongous amount of content generators who just
Mhm.
cannot generate content,
Mhm.
you will find someone who will do it for them. जब अभी
Mhm.
simple सोचो ना कि आज की डेट में, if look at food now, initially there may not have been enough market space for burgers,
Mhm.
but then as and when the burger space kept on increasing, more and more giants came. पहले McDonald's था, फिर KFC आ गया, अभी Burger King आ गया, अभी शायद वेंडीज भी आ रहा है इंडिया में. तो
Mhm.
आएंगे, सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म्स भी आएंगे.
Mhm.
It will create short term turbulence. Now
Mhm.
What we need to be ready for is how do we deal with the short-term turbulence. Now, Parler was removed. Parler has already sued Amazon. They have a very good case, and Parler will be back up using some other service provider in a short time. They will create. Yeah, I heard Ben Shapiro saying that this year they have decided after this Trump fiasco, they will be creating everything from scratch.
Wow.
The entire infrastructure from scratch. They are going to do it. Dave Rubin has left Patreon. His business is running, right? He's created it directly from his website. Jordan Peterson created his business directly from his website. There are many things that can be done. I told you, nature abhors vacuum. If you have a content, imagine you have a product and there are buyers in the market, and somebody says, I will not give you my platform to sell your product. You will go somewhere or you will create your own damn thing. It's impossible. In fact, what Twitter is doing is entrepreneurial suicide. Twitter has the stupidest business strategy. I have never come across a stupider business person than the people who are running Twitter. They are telling 50% of their subscriber base, you suck. They have literally fired their golden goose. The one man who had the highest engagement on Twitter was Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Look at Twitter stock. Facts don't lie. Look at the numbers. The stock has tanked. The shareholders are going to go and tell these people, these crazy people who are running Twitter, is like, are you mad? What are you doing? हमने तुम्हें पैसा क्यों लगाया गधो ताकि बर्बाद कर दो तुम इस कंपनी को. And look, Twitter is not doing a principled stand. They knew Trump lost. That's why they've removed him. अगर इतना गूदा था तो पहले क्यों नहीं किया?
Exactly.
So these are all political games. They are scared of the Democrats coming in. They don't want the Democrats to burn them. But what they have not realized is they went a step too far.
Yeah.
What they should have done was they should have kept on blocking Trump's tweets. And that was fine. That way they would have managed it. I think they went a step too far. The scorched earth policy that they have done. Now, Arey Baba, all it took was one tweet from Elon Musk and WhatsApp khatam.
Yeah.
सब लोग सिग्नल पे चले गए.
Correct.
सब चले गए सिग्नल पे. Why are they doing this? They're so stupid. See, as a businessman, I can tell you, मेरे को क्या करने का भाई? तू मेरे को गांधी दे रहा है ना? तेरा गांधी किधर से आता है? As long as ethical means से आ रहा है, legitimate means से, मेरे को क्या करने का है उससे? See, these people are. Ideology should never trump your business strategy. People who put ideology above business strategy will never be successful businessmen. और ट्विटर क्या कर लेगा इंडिया में? टिकटॉक कुछ कर पाया? बंद कर दिया ना उनको. कितने मिलियंस एंड मिलियंस, कितने इंडियंस थे टिकटॉक पे? कम से कम मेरे को तो लगता है कम से कम 5% तो हमारी पॉपुलेशन होगी टिकटॉक पे.
Possible.
बंद कर दिया एक दिन, क्या हुआ? कुछ कर पाया टिकटॉक? क्या उखाड़ लिया? ट्विटर बंद कर देंगे और ट्विटर बंद होएगा, वैक्यूम क्रिएट होएगा, नया आ जाएगा इंडिया में. वो उनका कौन सा है, चाइना वालों का वीबो है ना, वीबो. वी विल डू समथिंग. क्या लोग जब तक है चलाओ. इसके लिए आई एम नॉट गोइंग ऑन पार्लर, आई एम नॉट गोइंग ऑन द ट्विटर, आई एम ऑन ट्विटर एज लॉन्ग एज इट्स देयर. नहीं होगा दूसरे पे चले जाएंगे. यूट्यूब नहीं होएगा, विमियो पे चल जाएंगे. विमियो नहीं होएगा, कुछ और कर लेंगे. अरे आई टोल्ड यू, वी आर ओवर थिंकिंग दिस. It is, we should talk about it and we should criticize Twitter so that Twitter changes, so that we don't have to build something new.
Yeah.
But on hindsight, I believe there should be something new and we should be on two platforms. And two platforms, I mean, there should be a Republican hamburger, there should be a Democrat hamburger. I think world is better like that.
Yeah.
And we will have both hamburgers as Indians.
Yeah. But there's just one problem that I see there is that in that case, hoga kya ki you'll have one app, say Twitter, for people who are left leaning, and some other app, whatever that other app X may be. So there will be all the non-left and right-wing people and everyone will be there. And like you said, अच्छे content creators, good content creators will be on both sides. Probably they'll have a lot of cross communication. People will see each other's content and everything. But there are those smaller people who kind of live in echo chambers. But what will happen is, since we have two platforms, they'll be just kind of not talking to each other. They'll be talking within their platforms. And don't you see that as a little problem?
कौन सा लोग ट्विटर पे एक दूसरे से बात करते हैं? ट्विटर पे भी तो एल्गोरिथमिक एको चेम्बर्स हैं. तुम्हारी टीएल पे कौन सा बड़ा लेफ्टी लोगों के ट्वीट्स आते हैं? कितने आते हैं? तो अभी भी वही होएगा. इफ देयर इज प्लेटफॉर्म ए एंड प्लेटफॉर्म बी, प्लेटफॉर्म बी विल हैव अ डमी अकाउंट इन प्लेटफॉर्म ए. Go and look at those tweets, screenshot them and share them on platform B. Platform A will go have a dummy account in platform B, टेक देयर स्क्रीनशॉट्स एंड शेयर इट ऑन प्लेटफॉर्म है. वहां पे भी यही होने वाला है. होने दो ना, सबको घर मिल जाएगा, सबको मिल जाएगा. मेरे हिसाब से कुछ नहीं होना. बियॉन्ड द पॉइंट, दिस इज ऑल. My concern is Twitter has no right to interfere in Indian political process. This is why if they do what they want to do with their president, I don't care. They do it with India, ban the damn company. Who cares? I have X thousand followers on Twitter. मेरी क्या importance है? मेरी country के democratic process में interfere किया बंद कर दो.
True.
That is all I'm saying.
I think Uganda did this today. I mean, it's
brilliant.
Apparently, it affected Twitter so much that they tweeted from their own account that Uganda doing this is a matter of concern and we value free speech, as if they really do. Things like that. I mean, like, has pada mein literally wo pad gaye ki they're saying we value freedom of expression. You have the balls to say that after what you did a few days ago. I don't get it. Anyway, so I mean,
okay, Twitter has overplayed its hands, as they say, and they will play the price for it, and they are already paying the price for it. Just keep looking at their stock value.
Yeah. So all in all, one can say that you are a little optimistic on this front, that it won't matter to people and they'll just keep gravitating towards whoever creates good content. I think you also have your own website, right? So I mean,
yeah, I have my website, which is kushalmehra.com. I am putting all my content over there. Obviously, it's linked to YouTube, linked to XYZ. I've even stopped writing for other websites. I only write on my website now. I basically am trying to centralize my content space. So everybody who wants to go there, they go on my website, they get everything: my podcast, my blogs, my book recommendations, everything on one space, my merchandise. You have to make sure people come on you build your platform. Everybody will do that eventually. It will become a decentralized. We are already, Substack has come up. So many people are paying people to write. I am paying people to read their views on Substack. I told you, nature abhors vacuum. When big tech will become monopolistic, people will break the monopoly. आज तक कोई history में monopoly last नहीं की है beyond the point. तो ये कौन से स्पेशल हैं, ये भी नहीं लास्ट करेंगे.
So on that note, I think I should be conscious of your time and let you go. Thank you, Kushal, very much for appearing on my platform, and I wish you all the best for anything you do in the future, and I hope we can keep having such chats. I would like very much to listen to you. So I mean, I'll definitely keep following your content, and I hope that you also keep producing more and more interesting content for us to watch.
Well, I'm very happy that you have started this. I wish you all the success and happiness, and I hope more and more people subscribe to your podcast, and I'll be happy to have conversation in the future too.
Thank you, Kushal. So